The Jewish people looked forward to the day when they would be established the chief of the nations, that their Messiah would come and would vindicate them. But Paul is saying Messiah has come. The gospel of Jesus Christ is that God will judge individuals, rendering to each according to his deeds, and that in fact it is Jesus Christ who will be judge. And the judgment is based on the character of God, the righteousness of God. God has given the law to the Jewish people so that they might have an advantage of understanding what it is that pleases God. But they were never able to live by that standard, so they could never justify themselves before God. Therefore, the law was not really an advantage to the Jew, because they still rebelled against him in their hearts. Concerning the Gentiles, they didn't have the law in the tablets of stone, but Paul says the law is written in their hearts, and this is evident because even societies that have not had the word of God have standards of righteousness in them, people who will make laws and judge laws within that society. And ultimately, when God judges through Jesus Christ, it will be a judgment based on all of the facts, the secrets of men's heart. So those who have sought to follow the law will be justified. Those who have turned away from God will be condemned. The judgment will be made by Jesus the man, who experienced life himself on earth as a man, and so is sympathetic with the pressures that we have as such. Christ, the King, based on all of the facts. The Jews were very quick to condemn the Gentiles. So Paul continues in Romans chapter 2, verse 17. Indeed, you are called a Jew, and rest on the law, and make your boast in God, and know his will, and approve the things that are excellent, being instructed out of the law, and are confident that you yourself are a guide to the blind, a light to those who are in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of babes, having a form of knowledge and truth in the law. You therefore who teach another, do you not teach yourself? You who preach that a man should not steal, do you steal? You who say, do not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who make your boast in the law, do you dishonour God through breaking the law? For the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you, as it is written. For circumcision is indeed profitable if you keep the law. But if you are a breaker of the law, your circumcision has become uncircumcision. Therefore, if an uncircumcised man keeps the righteous requirement of the law, will not his uncircumcision be counted as circumcision? And will not the physically uncircumcised, if he fulfills the law, judge you who, even with your written code and circumcision, are a transgressor of the law? For he is not a Jew who is one outwardly, nor is circumcision that which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew who is one inwardly. And circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, not in the letter, whose praise is not from men, but from God. My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we share together these words from Romans chapter 2, verses 17 to 29. God had preserved the knowledge of himself in the world through the Jewish people, for he sent many prophets to them, and they had the written word of God in the Old Testament. Because they had this knowledge, they looked down on the Gentiles as those who were ignorant and blind. But the problem that Paul identifies here is that even though the Jews have the law, they do not actually keep the law. For while they can claim to be teachers, they have still not learned how to live by the law. So he poses the question, you who preach a man should not steal, do you steal? Which of us has not stolen at some point in our lives? We know we should not do so, But yes, we have done it. It may be a big thing, it may be a little thing. You who say do not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? Which of us, as Jesus put it, not committed adultery in our hearts? Let our minds stray where we know it should not. Which of us has always been pure in our moral thoughts and actions? You who hate idols. In our rational mind, we recognise idols are nothing. But he says, do you rob temples? You go to the idol temple and you want the gold and silver. You boast in the law, but you dishonour God by breaking the law. What is the basis of these accusations against the Jewish people? It's written in the law. The name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. The judgment has been passed by God. For the Gentiles can read the scriptures just as well as the Jews can, particularly since it had been translated into Greek and was widely available. And the Gentiles could look at the Jews and say, well, it is a noble book that they have, but they don't live up to it as a people. Because some individuals may be very zealous, but the majority of us are pretty slack. The Jewish people then said, but we're circumcised. God made a covenant with us at the time of Moses, and so we are God's people and we're accepted because we're circumcised. And Paul says, well, circumcision, it's a sign of a covenant, but the covenant has to be true for the sign to be relevant. If I wear a wedding ring, doesn't mean I'm married. If I don't wear a wedding ring, it doesn't mean I'm not married. But I wear a wedding ring because I am married. It is a sign of a covenant. But anyone can put on a ring and pretend that they are married. Or they can take off the ring and pretend that they're not married. There is a physical reality. The sign is not the reality. So, Paul says, if an uncircumcised man keeps the righteous requirements of the law, will not his uncircumcision be counted as circumcision? In other words, the reality is more important than the sign. And similarly, the physically uncircumcised, if he fulfills the law, condemns the person who, with the law and circumcision, breaks the law. So he declares, before God, he is not a Jew who is one outwardly, nor is circumcision that which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew who is one inwardly. The circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, not in the letter, whose praise is not from men, but from God. In other words, God knows those who are his. God knows those who have a relationship with him, those who love him, as the commandment was, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, mind and strength. The Lord can distinguish between those who pretend to love him because they fulfill outward requirements, and those who genuinely love him because they sit in his presence and meditate on him, and then do the things that he approves. So when it comes to the time of judgment, God sees the heart when he judges the secrets of men by Jesus Christ. This is focused on the Jewish people. But what Paul is saying is that, in fact, the classification we make of who is a Jew, who is not the relevant classification, because we make it on an outward basis. We make it on a basis of family and culture and history. But God is the one who sees the heart. And those who are his people are those who are his because they have a personal relationship with him, not just because they happen to be born in a family linked back to Isaac, which practices the sign of circumcision. The circumcision that matters is the circumcision of the heart. Is our heart given over to God? Is he the focus of our thinking? Is he the most important thing? If we miss time with him in a day, are we distressed about it, or is it just common for us? Is he the reason we do what we do and don't do what we avoid? Circumcision is profitable if you keep the law. It is a reminder that we are in a relationship with God, but it is not the essence. The essence is the heart, his spirit to our spirit. spirit.